What's up, Nix?
Hey, Scott.
Breaking news. This just in. Automation has a new player in town. Say hello to the Automation Town podcast. But this is not about a new automation podcast. This is about a new automation and integration software. This is about Amaka. Amaka is the gold standard in accounting, integrations, and automation. This is accounting integration software, a bridge app that I like to say is similar to Zapier, but I've been corrected. It's much deeper. It's made for accountants with customized account mapping, backsync data, and breakdown by products or categories. Amaka is designed by accountants for accountants using cloud products like Xero and QuickBooks Online. Connect the systems your clients use every day in a matter of minutes. More than 35,000 small businesses around the world are automating over 1 billion transactions with the Amaka platform. Use Amaka to connect QuickBooks or Xero to e-commerce platforms, POS systems, and more. Check out their integrations with BigCommerce, Revel, Lightspeed, Shopify, Squarespace, and Vend. And be on the lookout for Amazon, eBay, Wix, and WooCommerce, which are right around the corner. Get started with their 2-minute express setup. Increase your profitability and productivity without breaking the bank. With their 100% free plan, connect one integration to your platform or pay only $13 a month for up to 10 integrations. And if you're a bookkeeper or an accountant, get your practice listed in their advisor hub and find new clients that are seeking help from professionals just like you, and get your practice listed on their directory. Visit amaka.com. Check it out. Amaka.com, AMAKA.com. Start automating today. Today's topic is projects. Sons of CPA's bonus episode where Scott and Nix share a small but useful piece of practical advice as it relates to running their professional accounting firms. This episode is brought to you by the letter P.
Of course, as always.
Today's topic is projects.
Projects. Yeah, so I think most people nowadays don't really want to take on projects, right? Do you take on projects these days?
We're kind of scared of projects sometimes. I'm so scared to price them. I'm so scared that they're going to be the wrong project and take too much time. And then that's all everybody's talking about is this client with this project, and we're still not done with it, and it's been 7 months and we're still handling a lot of shit. All kinds of projects, right? So let's define project. When you say people don't want to take on projects, what are you referring to?
I think of a project as something that you know is not going to be recurring or unlikely to be recurring. So for example, someone comes to you and they want to sell their business and they need 3 or 5 years of financials recreated and then possibly help them through due diligence, and then they're gone. So huge spike in work, but potentially if you price it right, you can make a lot of money.
Well, we have in the past too, and we still are, because technically ERC is like a project.
That's true.
Actually, it's kind of, but projects, that was our big, we had a separate revenue category on, because we knew it wasn't recurring, but there would be like these $20,000 jobs, $40,000 jobs, $60,000 jobs that we were getting, and it only grew, it only increased, because then we knew how much we didn't like it. So then I would price it even higher the next time, and then higher the next time. Is it worth it?
Well, with the projects, you definitely have, I would say you have to price it 3 to 5 to 10 times higher than you would a normal engagement, because of the capacity that it takes up. Because I do like using projects. So if we get a really big project, let's say it's 10 grand a month for the next 6 months or something, right? That is a good opportunity to hire and train somebody. So if you were wanting to bring on a new team member, make a little bit of margin, use that to train them. And then the risk is when that project's over, right, that revenue falls off. But a way that you can protect yourself, and one thing we do, one is either you price it really high, or two, if it's a monthly engagement, you can have a 30 to 120 day cancellation clause, depending on the size. So you can say, okay, as soon as you give us notice that you don't need us anymore, let's say you're doing a temporary staffing job for a client, which we don't do any of that, but let's just say you are, for an example. You can say, okay, well, as soon as you give me notice that you don't need us anymore, you still have to pay us for 3 months after. And what that does is it preserves that time for that staff member and then allows you to recover that revenue elsewhere. And that's really the only way to protect yourself, because otherwise, you're in a situation where the revenue, they could say, hey, I don't need you tomorrow. Then all of a sudden you have this full-time staff member that you hired and you lost that revenue.
And and it takes some time to backfill that too. If you did want to backfill it with recurring work, you're going to need some more padding to fund you through that fill. And it's definitely capacity planning. It's also the risk of it being an endless project that basically never ends, and you almost risk not making that much money on it too.
So one thing we do to avoid that problem, because I've had that before where the client keeps coming back after you think you delivered the final product.
Yes.
So one, we have phases, and we write them all out in the project plan and what the final deliverable is. But second, we put a time period that they can give us feedback. So if the deliverable is financial statements, we'll say you have 2 weeks to give us any changes, feedback. After that, the project is considered terminated, and anything else, if you come back to us, will be a new project or billed at an hourly rate. Because I've definitely had that happen before where I didn't put that clause in, and then 6 months later, the owner never looked at the financials, and then they come back and they want to make changes, and it's this never ending, like you said, it doesn't end. It's like there's this liability that keeps popping back up. So definitely want to make sure you put that clause that after a certain trigger happens, they have X amount of time to do whatever they need to do, and then the project's considered terminated.
Setting clear expectations.
Yes.
That's just what you're doing in the beginning and letting them know this is what to expect at the end, and this is how to, that's got to be clear in any relationship, any business relationship. But it's hard when there's a lot of unknowns. So build in and factor in anything that's possibly an unknown. Well, here's what is known. We're going to be charging you for it, and here's the time frame. Sometimes you don't even know how long a project's going to take too.
Yeah, so that's the scary part with fixed fee pricing it. And we have a prospect right now. I'd say it's maybe a 50-50 chance they close, but they're doing like 17 million a year in revenue, and probably going to sell for 35 million. So this shows up on our desk, and we're like, oh man, we really want to value price this. And it was a really good conversation on our group chat, which you were a part of, and everyone had different opinions. I think the most aggressive was Will. He's like, take 10% of the sales price. And I'm like, okay, that's going to make us look like an ass. If, in order to value price, you have to prove that you're valuable, right? And you can't assume that there's not any other firm that they could go to. So our proposal ended up just taking it. So it's 5 years of financials that they wanted done on accrual basis. Really big project. We think it's going to take 4 months of, maybe 40 hours a week between two people. So we ended up pricing it as, I think, like 25 or 30 grand per year that we go back and do. So it's going to end up being, and then maybe an onboarding cost, I think is like 150, 170K. But that to the business owner who potentially is going to sell their business for $35 million, I think is fair. And I know that we'll get it done right and they'll be able to sell their business. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about finding balance between something that you think you can get away with up front, but then also justifying it. You got to justify it to yourself, whatever you're pricing. And with a lot of these ongoing projects that have an unknown timetable, you got to be able to try and price the unknown. But how do you set an expectation for something that you don't know how long it's going to take? When the client says, okay, how long is this going to take? Do you have a roughly out of pocket 2 months, or like, what do you say? Yeah.
So we actually, in this engagement, because we were he had a lot of information that he could provide us. And so we made sure that we asked him for bank statements going back to 2017, because sometimes clients will say, oh, I have all this information, and then they don't during the sales process. But then the other thing we did is phase one, and we said we're going to do a test year, or we're going to go test, basically make sure that we have all the information is available that you said was going to be, and then we're going to do that year. And then we have we reserve the right to increase the price if something that you didn't tell us during the sales process pops up. So we're trying to mitigate our risk with that one sample year.
Yeah. So there are some upsides to projects. It could lead to a recurring revenue, could lead to a client if you take on a big conversion project. We used to do a lot of conversions from QuickBooks to Xero, and it was always the potential of, okay, this is going to be a great long-term client, and that's typically why we would take the project on. And then sometimes we just lose focus of them being a long-term client. We just want to get the project done and get them out of the door because they suck, or whatever it is.
I find that they almost always turn into long-term clients, and people think they're going to sell their business in a year, and it ends up being 3 years. It's never as fast as they think, and then they need someone recurring. We had a prospect come in last week, and we just didn't have the energy. Like, their in-house bookkeeper was retiring, and we were looking at the financials and their systems, and we're like, we're going to have to spend so much time fixing everything, unraveling this 20 years of history, and then recreating it. And Ashley and I were just like, we don't have the energy to deal with this. Like, we're gonna pass.
I know. Sometimes it's not worth the paycheck. It's not worth what they're gonna pay you, even if they'll pay anything. And sometimes the more willing they are to pay more, then there's another problem there, because that means that they probably have, if they're definitely willing, like the ones that accepted these $40,000 proposals immediately, I look back on it and I know they probably got some other bids, or they probably had a failed project already, and now they're just trying to throw money at it and try to get it done because they know they can't do it.
Sometimes doing a small project can get you in the door, and it can actually help you get to the point where you can value price later. So we had our biggest client right now. They wanted to pay us $500 a month when we first started working with them. Now they pay us $20,000 a month, but that was just evolution over time of providing more value. And that started with a project, like a discovery project, to evaluate their accounting function. So I definitely think that projects can lead into long-term work if you have the capacity, and it's just making sure that your team is, if you don't have the capacity and your team is already working, 90% chargeable each week, or billing the clients, they probably don't have the capacity to take on another client. So you do have to think about that for jamming more work down their throat.
So project management, once you do take on a project, managing it and managing the workflow, the capacity, because each project, they're sometimes bespoke, sometimes they're different. You don't really have clear processes. You might have people that are dedicated to doing that, but like, it's every onboarding client is an onboarding project, and it's an onboarding thing, and it's always a little bit different. I think having a clear person that handles projects versus somebody that handles recurring work, and that's an accounting manager, they should be probably different people. It's one thing that Chris has argued at the firm is we don't want people on that are doing recurring work, doing the onboarding and doing the one-off projects, because then we really can never measure their capacity. It's hard.
Yeah, the onboarding is tough. It's the same thing with the projects, where it's this huge spike in work. And then same thing, I'd love to have an onboarding person that just does onboarding. But then the challenge with that is you have somebody you're passing on the context between the salesperson to the onboarding person, then to the recurring team member. Definitely talk to different firms that do it differently. Like Chris Williams, I know his firm, the ongoing account manager does the onboarding, whereas a lot of other firms I know, they actually have an onboarding specialist that does the onboarding. And I don't know if that means that they actually go in and do the retroactive work too, or if it's more of just the administrative side of getting all the documents.
Yeah. Well, we have started the recurring work immediately, and the retroactive work is done in unison, but it's not like we wait until all the retro work is done before we start the recurring. We'll set up, if it's Xero, we'll set up a new Xero file, try to do anything that we need to do to pull the right data in, but then we start doing the work right away.
That's interesting. Okay, because we've kind of gone back and forth on that with some recent projects that have come in that are recurring as well, of do we attack the immediate problem first and keep doing it like it is, Or do we say, let's start from the very beginning, do all the retroactive work,
double-edged
clean
sword.
it up, set
Yeah.
up the chart of accounts, start from day one.
Set
and
the
then,
right rules up with all the transactions that already exist. So then the new ones are already going to have rules, right? There's
Yeah.
benefits to doing the back work first.
There is.
What we found though is to manage the capacity, to manage the client, and to let them know that they are getting something for their monthly price. Because if we want them to start paying monthly, then we should be doing current work too. I think
Yeah.
that's the only real justification I have. But I think I've always justified it in the past. We should do the back work first because then we get a full understanding of everything with this client.
Yeah, that definitely would stress me out to try to start, like jump in and then try to go backwards. I haven't tried it before. I will say that
think you can do
it is
both.
annoying when you're doing the retroactive and then there's this gap, right? So let's say you're moving over to zero and they're on QBO, and then there's a month gap where they're sending out invoices and paying bills. So you have to manually convert that in between periods. So you're like trying to get it done as fast as possible. And then say, okay, on this date, now you have to invoice out of zero and get everything converted over and them going, it's stressful.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could figure out processes for that if you do a lot of it. And the thing is that it hasn't been as commonplace to do these bigger projects. A lot of them were just, it's kind of like the efforts of the sales process is reflective of how much we can handle at the time. So I don't really care about landing some projects because I don't want to have to take on all that work. It's like, you know what? Let's just start you in January. It's like, it'll be August. And I'll say, you know what? Let's just let you finish out this year doing whatever. And then we'll start you in January. When I was hungry, I would be like, yeah, let's fucking convert this 9 months of data and then have you current before the end of the year. So it's like all about what you want to take on too, right?
Yeah, we would definitely slow roll sales, book out the meeting a couple weeks from now. Like we're busy, right? We're rolling off something else and we're trying to push out the sale, the start date. But that's another thing I would say. The client's emergency is not your emergency. I mean, how many times have you had a client that says, it comes to you in a panic, is like, I need to get started right away. And then you send in the proposal and you don't hear from them for a month and they come back and you're like, I thought that was an emergency. So it's never an emergency as long as you've got somebody.
Well, we do that on our intake form. We have them measure the urgency of it. We say, urgent and important is a 10 and, important but not urgent, it's like a 5. And, it's just like I had a call today where they didn't even show up, but they put a 10. Like, how could it have been a 10 and you don't even show up for the call?
Probably the type of person that's always putting out fires.
Yeah. They're like they figured out a solution for it, and then they come back to you and say, "Oh no, I have this problem." Yeah, it's like.
So, what are you? Is there an answer you're looking for on that?
Is it the firefighter that starts the fires just so they can put it out, right? Like the person that puts, and I don't mean to draw the analogy to firefighters. I don't think Mike is somebody that starts fires, but there are people that start fires just so they can put them out, so they feel like they've accomplished something.
Yeah.
Break something just so you can fix it.
Have you found a correlation between the way people answer that question and if they're good clients or not?
Fuck yes, definitely. Like I'm at the point where we can look at that form and it's like, all right, well, if they put low prices as one of the qualities that they're looking for in an accountant and a 10, I don't even want to get on that call. Like this is, if their problem is the most urgent than anybody else and they put low prices.
I'm taking notes on this. This is good.
They are, and then their budget, if their budget's definitely low, well, that's low prices too. But it's the way that they answer certain questions too. So we have some free form questions and we ask them what's something that they did last year that they look back on with pride. And some of them don't even fucking have the time to bother answering that. Or like something that you're proud of, right? Like talk about something that you did, or I don't know, different like open-ended questions based on how thoughtful they could be to answering that versus what does this have to do with this survey, or something like that. Like it's got, it's correlations, right? Between somebody who respects your time and respects you versus my time is more valuable than anybody's. And why should I even bother doing this? I just want to pay you and get this over with, right? What
was your budget question? How do you frame that?
So
it's not the 3 quality. Yeah. Well, how do you ask them about? You said price sensitive.
So the 3 qualities we have like, I don't know, like 15 attributes of what people should be looking for, but then we sprinkle a few bad ones in there. One of them is will bend the rules. And if somebody picks a combination of will bend the rules and low prices, boom, they get kicked out of the survey. It's like it's a little it's a little Easter egg. Like
so it doesn't even get to schedule a time with you. It's just
you cannot schedule a time. Yeah, they basically have a picture of somebody that's like, sorry, like it's.
Oh, so you actually just let them know like they're not a good fit. Like you failed the test.
Yeah, you have not. And one of them is transparency or accountability or honesty or knowledgeable. One of them has a physical location. Well, that one has to boot them out, right? Like, so we're trying to add things that if of these 15 things, if these are your top 3, we're probably not going to be a good fit anyway, So.
Now, do any of those go back to they probably go back to your core values, right? It's like trying to find someone that aligns with you.
Yeah, we definitely have our core values in there, and we have things that, we know if we basically kind of internally surveyed our current clients, like what makes them a good client, kind of like you do with your core values for your team. And you look at what are the qualities of a team member that, we want to replicate. And that's inherently who we are and inherently who the clients are. You can't change something about yourself. So, as much as somebody wants to put on a front, there's a lot of different ways to filter that through. Again, don't know what this has to do with projects, but that is like part of filtering out if you want to take on a project or not is the type of client, because it could be the same type of work, but based on the person's expectation of perfection, bringing it back to last week's episode, if they want something perfect, then the job's never going to be done, right? Yeah. That project will never be over if they're expecting perfection. So it's managing their expectations.
Keep giving you feedback and wanting to change things, and you get yourself. Right? Yeah, you kind of have to protect yourself on that too. The other thing you could do that I haven't successfully done is use subcontractors. If you could find really good people that just want project work, and then you get projects that come in and say, hey, here, do these 3 years of financials, that would be a nice solution, I think. But I feel I have a hard time with quality on that, especially on a accrual basis.
Right. If it's quality, but also like who's going to manage the relationship? And if they are managing the relationship, then why are they a contractor? Why doesn't the client just hire them directly? And it's like, well, you brokered it, put it all together. But at the end, you want to have the control over how the work's done too, if it's you representing that. So there's different reasons to have contractors, but that's a whole like 1099 versus a W-2 is the control you have over how the work's done. So it depends, what you want long-term out of it. If it's just a one-off project, you can definitely be profitable if you have a contractor.
Right. Depending on the project, you have to have someone that can come in and understand what the goal is. In my case, if the goal is to sell the business, right? Like I can go in and say, okay, I know exactly what a buyer is going to look like and how we need to structure the financial statements. So someone like me is going to have to work with a lower level staff, say, hey, this is how we need to break out the revenue. This is how we need to break out the COGS. We need to move these things below the line because they're not recurring, and sort of manage the process, which you could probably use a contractor for that if you found somebody good. But it just takes, it's just trying to figure out who you have on your team available and depending on the complexity of it. I mean, I would love to just be the firm to go to when people want to sell their business and take on these massive projects and take a percentage of the sale. If we were like known for that, but because I think we're pretty good at it, but it's hard to find.
There you go.
Get those whales.
Well, you can start marketing to that and start telling that story. Take some of those whales and tell their story. To the listeners. Yeah,
I mean, at this point, we've been through a few now, and they've had successful exits. So, yeah, that is case studies. Oh, do you have a ponytail?
I do. Yeah.
Since when do you have
My
that?
My kids love it.
I guess I haven't seen the back of your head in many, many months.
I know. I have long hair now. What's the reaction? It looks stupid.
No, I like it. It's different.
All right.
Do you guys watch American Idol?
No.
Okay. I love American Idol.
Who is it?
It just reminds me there's like always some oddballs on that show.
So I'm the oddball.
Not oddball, but people with different
person
hair.
That has their ponytail. My daughter loves the ponytail. Aria loves the ponytail.
Does she do it for you? Brush it for you?
No, she doesn't. I use her hair things though.
Oh, okay.
Put it in my head.
Now you know what it's like to be a girl, just always need a hair tie.
Well, again, like if I don't want to just move my hair, or now it's like if I don't want to do my hair because it's long, if I don't want to like if it's all messed up, I'll just put it up. It's easy, right?
Yeah, I wear my hair in a ponytail like
yeah.
almost every day.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep growing it for a while. We'll see. And for projects, you know, I think the last bit that we want to talk about is just the projects, right? Why are certain parts of the inner city called projects?
Okay. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Do you know that?
Is it because it was a project? It was an experiment? Or is it, why is it called the projects? I'm just curious, actually. Again, nothing really to do with accounting, but maybe we can pull a tie in.
Oh, it's short for public housing projects.
Public housing projects. Again, is it a project like a...
Projects built in mass during the mid-20th century were infamous for being large-scale, bland-looking brick apartment towers, often built on the same plot of land, offset from the street. Probably just cheap housing.
Yeah. Public housing projects.
Learned something new today. Interesting.
Yeah. So that must have been a pretty big project to plan and put together, to build and budget for, and that was probably easy because it was replicatable. Obviously low margin type, I guess, who knows, high margins for some people, low margins for others. I think that's the kind of thing with your firm too. You want these projects to be highly profitable. You want them, oh man, we are off the rails. I'm trying to tie this into projects. No,
you're on the right track there. Yes, you absolutely, you have to price them correctly because you're taking more risks. So if something happens, you have enough cash stocked up, right? When that project's over, if you have to hire somebody, you've got 3 months worth of cash to go out and get new revenue.
I have too much cash right now. Yes, yeah, definitely. I'm having a hard time with all of this cash. I don't know what to do with it. Good problems, right? First world problems. Oh, Jesus.
You're paying for drinks in San Diego.
Yeah. Anybody needs a job, I got the cash. I got to do some more hiring.
Your employees,
we just hired somebody new.
Gonna come asking for more money.
Yeah. They can see the books. My books are open to anybody. I'll share them with the listeners too. Projects are something that you should really be thoughtful of. Look back at your more profitable projects. Oh, projects, zero projects. That is something I had a call on today too. I should have tied that in earlier, but let's talk about that. That's like job costing, right?
Yeah, so we have Zero one client that uses that, or that we set up on it.
Yeah, made a lot of effort to get projects really working good, and now they're really pushing that. So for anybody that has verticals in agriculture, construction, or agriculture, construction, or real estate, Zero has teams dedicated to that now, and they want to help. They had a long call with us talking about construction and how projects could be beneficial, and we talked about all the reasons why projects have been hard for us in the past. And we did go into detail on what hasn't been working, and it's the difficult thing is getting all of the materials and labor coded correctly and into the system correctly without having a full-time person doing that at the firm or at the construction, at the client. Either the client needs to have a full-time person that's handling the day-to-day of that, of tracking, or the firm does. And if the firm doesn't have the resources to dedicate to that, are you going to have a full-time person working on just 4 clients, just doing all of their coding to jobs? And it's a lot of communication back and forth too. Like, where did this one go? So
yeah, we have one client that was talk about projects, one of the worst migrations ever, because they had projects in QBO. They wanted to move to Zero. They're on Bill.com and in QBO, and had all these projects. We had to set them all up and had to build out the whole workflow, train them. Anyway, they have an in-house person that does the AP and AR, but we have them, the workflow, you have to do it through Zero. You have to enter it in Zero first, because Bill.com, you can't tag a project. I don't think any of them, like Routable, does either. So you definitely have to enter the bill, and in Zero, tag it to the project, and there's like a couple extra steps to set it up properly. And then the client maintains another spreadsheet, and there's like a tie out that we have to do and book the whip and all that. So we're trying to offload that client right now.
And then the labor hours they can't be, so you can track the time and everything in Zero, but that doesn't cleanly push to a payroll platform. And then when the data comes back out of the payroll platform, they don't have it coded for project. So then getting that coded correctly or agreeing and reconciling with the project data that you already recorded, and then the GL data is going to hit the bank is just one big lump sum anyway. So then matching that up.
Yeah, I would probably do the project coding in Gusto and then create the departments and put it through. I wouldn't do the time tracking in Zero projects. It's pretty limited.
Right. Well, that's the problem with it right now. So they're working on fixing that, or they were talking about it. They mentioned a couple apps that work. So if you do have construction clients, Tradeify or CoreCon are two apps that are part of the Zero marketplace that they were kind of pushing and talking about. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because I had that call today about Zero projects. So I figured we should definitely mention that. Give Zero a shout out. One of our supporters. So projects. Take on your projects with care and with intention. I think sometimes you end up winning on some, you end up losing on some. But if you can minimize the loss and still try to make money on all of them, again, they're not all going to be profitable, but it is not a bad idea if you take on a lot of projects to use Zero projects to track that if you can, because the reporting capabilities are kind of cool. So I don't know. Most of it's going to be time. If you got to look at profitability and you're not tracking time at your firm, you're not really going to be able to allocate much of the labor on there.
So I have a question on that real quick. Does Carbon allow you to track time and then see your project profitability?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I think I need to get on Carbon. Yeah, because we're trying to build a little app that will
Not
will take
project,
T-Sheets
but by
data.
client. It kind of, basically Carbon's got the data within it.
So you can track, you can track it
profitability by client,
by project line. So if you wanted to see it
by jobs.
Yeah.
So work items is
Do you take all your notes in Carbon too?
Yes.
Do you share those collaborative
Everybody
clients on
sees
it? Clients do?
I don't know with clients. No. I think the client facing app is more so Lisio, and that does work with Carbon, but that's not.
I thought Lisio was.
We don't use
Carbon.
Lisio.
Oh, okay.
It's eventually going to they'll both eventually probably be doing the same thing, but they're two different apps. They serve kind of different purposes. One's more the front office, one's like the back office. So, and they're both trying to merge into the other space, but right now they just have an integration.
Yeah.
So the stuff that the client would see and where the client goes would be Lisio, and that should be, because Carbon really only has a way to assign something to a client that they can do, and they could drop documents and do certain things, but it's not made for that. So
we don't send too many documents back and forth. It's more of like we have a rolling notebook that we have, a Word document that we keep notes on. I'm trying to get the team in the habit of attaching it to their calendar invite, the weekly or monthly meeting, and the Google Sheet too, if we have a cash flow or something. Anyway, I diverge.
You digress.
Digress. Verge.
You divest. You
Tired.
You decentralize your work, right? I have been conscious of not saying that word at all since you called me out on it last week for listeners.
I heard it on your last podcast episode, but it might have been recorded a long time ago.
We'll see. Yeah. Thanks, Nix.
All right, Scott. Take care.